What do you what do you guys see on the front of the
A girl in a spider web
What
and
else?
a pig and a duck.
So where do you think the girl is? Not you, Hannah. Somebody else. Where do you think she's at? Anybody?
A barn?
Do you think so? Did you say a farm, Hendrix?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, Riley, what else do you want to say? Where's the back?
I think she's on a garden.
You think she's on a garden? This is a spider web and it says some pig. What do you think that's about? Anybody? Nobody? Well, let's go ahead and let's start the book and we'll see. This is called Charlotte's Web. It was one of my favorite books of all time when I was growing up. I loved it. My mom read it to me. Chapter 1, Before Breakfast. Where's Papa going with that axe? Said Fern to her mother as they were setting the table for breakfast. Out to the hog house, replied Mrs. Arabelle. Some pigs were born last night. I don't see why he needs an axe, continued Fern, who was only 8. Well, said her mother, one of the pigs is a runt. It's very small and weak, and it will never amount to anything. And your father is going to do away with it. Oh, what do you guys think of that? Is that kind of freaky? Do away with it, shrieked Fern. You mean kill it? Just because it's smaller than the others? Mrs. Arabelle put a pitcher of cream on the table. Don't yell, Fern, she said. Your father is right. The pig would only die anyway. Fern pushed a chair out of the way and she ran outdoors. The grass was wet and the earth smelled like springtime. Fern's sneakers were sopping by the time she caught up with her father. Here she is. Do you guys see her? What's she doing?
I've heard this story
Pulling the
before.
axe away.
What? Who said what's she doing, Riley?
What's she doing?
Pulling the axe away.
Pulling the axe away from her father.
Miss
Please
Child.
don't kill it, she sobbed. It's unfair. Mr. Arabelle stopped walking. Fern, he said gently, you will have to learn to control yourself. Control myself, yelled Fern. This is a matter of life and death. And you talk about controlling myself? Tears ran down her cheeks, and she took hold of the axe and tried to pull it away from her father's hand. Fern, said Mr. Arabelle, I know more about raising a litter of pigs than you do. A weakling makes trouble. Now run along. But it's unfair, cried Fern. The pig couldn't help being born small, could it? If I had to be very small at birth, would you have killed me? Mr. Arabelle smiled. Certainly not, he said, looking down at his daughter with love. But this is different. A little girl is one thing, and a little runty pig is another. I see no difference, replied Fern, still hanging on to the axe. This is the most terrible case of injustice I have ever heard of. A queer look came over John Arabelle's face. He seemed almost ready to cry himself. All right, he said. You go back to the house and I will bring the rent when I come in. I'll let you start it on a bottle like a baby. Then you'll see what kind of trouble a pig can be. When Mr. Arabelle returned to the house half an hour later, he carried a carton under his arm. Fern was upstairs changing her sneakers. The kitchen table was set for breakfast, and the room smelled great because it smelled like coffee and bacon and damp plaster and wood smoke from the stove. Put it on the chair, said Mrs. Arabelle. Mr. Arabelle set the carton down at Fern's place. Then he walked to the sink and washed his hands and dried them on the roller towel. Fern came slowly down the stairs. Her eyes were red from crying. As she approached the chair, The carton wobbled and there was a scratching noise. Fern looked at her father. Then she lifted the lid of the carton. There inside, looking up at her, was the newborn pig. It was a white one. The morning light shone through its ears, turning them pink. He's yours, said Mr. Arabelle, saved from an untimely death. And may the good Lord forgive me for all of this foolishness. Fern couldn't take her eyes off the tiny pig. Oh, she whispered, oh, look at him. He is absolutely perfect. She closed the carton carefully. She kissed her father and then she kissed her mother. Then she opened the lid again and lifted the pig out and held it against her cheek. At this moment, her brother Avery came into the room. Avery was 10. He was heavily armed, an air rifle in one hand and a wooden dagger in the other. There he is. What do you guys think of Avery? Looks like
Looks cool.
That's
No.
how it was back in those days on the farm.
He's like an army dude.
Kind of. He's more like a farm boy. What's that? He demanded. What's Fern got? She's got a guest for a breakfast, said Mrs. Arabelle. Wash your hands and face, Avery. Let's see it, said Avery, setting his gun down. You call that miserable thing a pig? That's a fine specimen of a pig. It's no bigger than a little white rat. Wash up and eat your breakfast, Avery, said his mother. The school bus will be along in half an hour. Can I have a pig too, Pop? asked Avery. No, I only distribute pigs to early risers, said Mr. Arabelle. Fern was up at daylight, trying to rid the world of injustice. As a result, she now has a pig. A small one, to be sure, but nevertheless a pig. It just shows that what can happen if a person gets out of bed promptly. Let's eat. But Fern couldn't eat until the pig had a drink of milk. Mrs. Arabelle found a baby's bottle and put the nipple on it. She poured more milk into the bottle, fitted the nipple over the top and handed it to Fern. Give him his breakfast. There she is. Isn't he cute? Do you see the pig?
He's
Oh,
double.
Goodness.
Guys, I want to
double,
tell you something.
double cute.
Why would you want to kill a cute little pig?
I think, when Mr. Arabelle has a farm and he raises pigs, and when you eat bacon or pork chops, where did they come
That's
from?
pig.
Right. So that's just his business. So he was like, to him, those are animals that he makes money from, just like a lot of farmers. And that's kind of the way of the world when you farm. So he was like, that little runt's probably going to die. So I just do away with it. That's why it's sort of like business to him. You get what I'm saying?
It's a life cycle, kind of.
Yeah, kind of. Right. The
My
circle of
grandpa-
life.
Yeah, my grandpa was a farmer of pigs, kind of.
Yeah. So you
just-
should ask your mom or dad about how that is. So
Yeah, he worked on a farm, technically.
yeah. Okay, a minute later, Fern was seated on the table in the corner of the kitchen with infant between her knees. She began to suck from the bottle. The pig, although tiny, had a good appetite and he caught on really quick. The school bus honked from the road. Run, commanded Mrs. Arabelle, taking the pig from Fern and slipping a donut into her hand. Avery grabbed his gun and another donut. The children ran out to the road and climbed into the bus. Fern took no notice of the others on the bus. She just sat and stared out the window, thinking what a blissful world it was and how lucky she was to have her entire life changed by a pig. By the time the bus reached school, Fern had named her pet, selecting the most beautiful name that she could think of. Here's his name. Are you ready? Its name is Wilbur. Everybody say that. Wilbur. Wilbur.
So
In a little bit, it says Will in it.
Uh-huh. It does, William. Its name is Wilbur. He was thinking about the pig when the teacher said, Fern, what is the capital of Pennsylvania? No, replied Fern dreamily, and everyone giggled, but Fern blushed. And I'll do chapter 2. I think this book will be 2 chapters a day. Chapter 2, Wilbur. Fern loved Wilbur more than anything. She would stroke him and to feed him and put him in bed. Every morning, as soon as she got up, she warmed his milk, tied his bib on, and held the bottle for him. And every afternoon, when the school bus stopped in front of the house, she jumped out and ran to the kitchen to fix another bottle for him. She fed him again at supper time and again just before going to bed. Mrs. Arabelle gave him a feeding around noontime each day when Fern was away in school. Wilbur loved his milk, and he was happier than when Fern was warming up a bottle for him. He was never happier than when Fern was warming up a bottle for him. He would stand and he would gaze at her with adoring eyes. For the first few days of his life, Wilbur was allowed to live in a box near the stove in the kitchen. Then when Mrs. Arabelle complained, he was moved to a bigger box in the woodshed. At 2 weeks of age, he was moved outdoors. It was apple blossom time, which is spring, and the days were getting warmer. Mr. Arabelle fixed a small yard specially for Wilbur under the apple tree and gave him a large wooden box full of straw with a doorway cut in it so he could walk in and out as he pleased. Won't he be cold at night? Asked Fern. No, said his father. You watch and see what he does. Carrying a bottle of milk, Fern sat down under the apple tree inside the yard. Wilbur ran up to her and she held the bottle for him while he sucked. Then when he had finished the last drop, he grunted and walked sleepily into the box. Fern peered through the door. Wilbur was poking the straw with his snout. In a short time, he had dug a tunnel in the straw. He crawled into the tunnel and disappeared from sight, completely covered with straw. Fern was enchanted. It relieved her mind to know that her baby would sleep all covered up and would stay warm. And here's the little place for Wilbur under the apple tree. He is very, very cute.
I forgot to tell you, I've heard this book before.
That's good. You'll enjoy it again. I've heard it many times.
Yeah, my mom made it to me when I was a tiny baby.
Oh, every morning after breakfast, Wilbur walked out to the yard and waited with her till the bus came. She would wave goodbye to him, and he would stand and watch the bus until it vanished around the turn. While Fern was in school, Wilbur was shut up inside the yard. But as soon as she got home in the afternoon, she would take him out, and he would follow her around the place. If she went into the house, Wilbur went too. If she went upstairs, Wilbur would wait at the bottom step, down again.
No.
Let's mute everybody. Okay. Sorry. If she took her doll for a walk in the doll carriage, Wilbur followed along. Sometimes on these journeys, Wilbur would get tired and Fern would pick him up and put him in the carriage alongside the doll. There she is doing that. What do you think of that?
I forgot how adorable that was.
Oh, that is adorable. It is, Sophie. Okay, let's see. And if he was very tired, he would close his eyes and go to sleep under the doll's blanket. He looked cute when his eyes were closed because his lashes were so long. The doll would close her eyes too. And Fern would wheel the carriage very slowly and smoothly so as not to wake her babies. One warm afternoon, Fern and Avery put on bathing suits and went down to the brook for a swim. Wilbur tagged along at Fern's heels. When she waded into the brook, Wilbur waded in with her. He found the water quite cold, too cold for his liking. So while the children swam and played and splashed at the water at each other, Wilbur amused himself in the mud. Oh, yeah, pigs like mud. Along the brook, where
That's
it
what
was
keep this
warm
name
and
fresh.
moist and delightfully sticky and oozy. Every day was a happy day, and every night was peaceful. Wilbur was what the farmers call a spring pig, which simply means that he was born in the springtime. When he was 5 weeks old, Mr. Arabelle said he was now big enough to sell and he would have to be sold. Uh-oh. Fern broke down and wept, but her father was firm about it. Wilbur's appetite had increased and he was beginning to eat scraps of food in addition to milk. Mr. Arabelle was not willing to provide for him any longer. He had already sold Wilbur's 10 brothers and sisters. He's got to go, Fern. You had your fun raising the baby pig, but Wilbur is not a baby any longer, and he has got to be sold. Call up the Zuckermans, suggested Mrs. Arabelle to Fern. Your Uncle Homer sometimes raises a pig. And if Wilbur goes to live there, you can walk down the road and visit him as often as you like. How much money should I ask for him? Fern wanted to know. Well, said her father, he's a runt. Tell your Uncle Homer you've got a pig to sell for $6 and see what he says. It was soon arranged. Fern phoned and got Aunt Edith, and her Aunt Edith hollered at Uncle Homer, and Uncle Homer came in from the barn and talked to Fern. When he heard the price was only $6, he said that he would buy the pig. Next day, Wilbur was taken from his home under the apple tree and went to live in a manure pile in the cellar of the Zuckerman's barn. And that's the end of that chapter. Chapter 3 is called Escape.
I know what manure is.
What's manure?
Doo-doo.
Yes, that's how pigs live. You guys are going to learn a lot about farms and the way it goes on farms once from this book, don't you think?
I seen the movie of Charlotte.
Don't give away the end, please. If you're going to do that, don't do that.
I know the movie.
Okay.
I know the movie too.
Okay, good. Don't be a spoiler.
I'm not going to.
You guys, this will be a great book and you'll learn all about all the other farm animals too. It's going to be amazing. Okay, everybody. What do you have now?